All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and our latest set of RBT exam practice questions where we're going through each question together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. As always, when you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Your 1.5-year-old daughter has started looking at you and pointing to her mouth. When she does, you give her a snack and say, "Hungry?" even if she has eaten recently. She is now saying "hungry" when pointing to her mouth. What are you demonstrating? So what are you accomplishing here? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you achieving given this information? Well, what we know is you have your daughter who looks at you and points to her mouth. In response, you give her a snack and say, "Hungry?" even if she has eaten recently. Now, as a result, she is saying "hungry" when pointing to her mouth. So what have you done? Well, you've taught her that as well as pointing to her mouth, she can also say "hungry" when hungry. And when she does, she gets food. So you are effectively reinforcing this requesting or this manding, and then you're strengthening it and improving it by giving her more ways to engage in the behavior of asking for food. So now not only can she point to her mouth, but she can also say "hungry," knowing that she will receive a snack or food in return. So what are you demonstrating in this scenario? A high P request sequence. Well, with a high probability request sequence, we give a lot of high probability requests first, followed by a low probability request. And that's not occurring here, right? We're not giving a bunch of high probability requests in a row. What about B, a pre-MAC principle? Well, the pre-MAC principle, or grandma's law, says you're going to use the opportunity to engage in a highly preferred activity or response as reinforcement for engaging in a low preferred response. But that's not what you're doing either. What are you doing? Well, you're doing C, your functional communication training. You're teaching your daughter more functional ways to communicate her wants and needs. Sure, pointing to her mouth can indicate the same thing as "hungry," but what's a better way of doing it? Well, saying "hungry." That's going to be more socially valid, it's going to be more acceptable as she grows up, and it's giving her an additional response to use in the case that people don't know what it means when she points to her mouth. So what you're doing is you're training or teaching her to more functionally communicate by reinforcing responses that are functional communication. And then D, differential reinforcement of other behavior. Well, with differential reinforcement of other behavior, you reinforce in the absence of a behavior, and you don't teach a replacement. In this case, you are teaching a replacement, or you're teaching essentially a new behavior. So you're not reinforcing for her not doing something, you're reinforcing when she does something, which is pointing to her mouth, and then you're giving her new language by saying "hungry." So what you're doing is functional communication training. You're teaching your daughter to more functionally communicate her wants and needs. You want to go on a date night, but you need to find a sitter. You're discussing with your significant other what you should pay the babysitter for the night. Your significant other says that you'll likely be gone 5 hours, so you should pay the sitter $250. What answer represents rate based on this information? Okay, a rate question. What is rate? Rate is continuous measurement. It is frequency over time. So we need a frequency, and then we need a time. So what is your frequency in this case? Well, your frequency is going to be $250, right? Because how many dollars are you paying? $250. And what is your time? Well, your time is going to be 5 hours. So all this other stuff is a little insignificant when you're trying to find rate. We need the numbers, right? We need frequency and we need time. And so now that we have the numbers, how do we actually find that rate? Well, we need to divide our frequency of 250 by our time, which is 5, and that's going to give us 50. So now we have to convert that to rate. A, $250 per hour. Well, we have 5 hours, right? And we're paying her a total of $250. So our rate is not going to be $250 per hour. Our total frequency is $250, but not our rate. B, 5 hours. Well, 5 hours is our time or our duration, right? How long is she working or how long will you be gone? A total of 5 hours, but that doesn't equal rate. Rate is frequency and time, frequency divided by time. If we go to C, $50 is what we got when we divided it per hour, right? $250 for 5 hours is going to be $50 per hour. It's clearly not going to be $40 per hour because the math doesn't work out. Now, you might look at this and say, well, this is basically a math problem. And it is, because for the exam, you need to know how to find averages, you need to know how to find totals, and you need to know how to find rate. And it's a very simple calculation, right? Frequency divided by time, always have that per, right? $50 per hour, which is your unit of time. Jason got caught sneaking out of his house last Friday night. On Saturday, his dad made Jason stay home and gave him a list of chores to do, including mowing the lawn, weeding the garden, and cleaning the pool. Jason's dad told him he better have everything done by the time he gets home from work. How will Jason's dad measure Jason's behavior? So, another measurement question. And what do we know about Jason's dad and what he might use to measure the behavior? Well, first thing we know is he's going to be at work while Jason is engaging in all these activities. So we know immediately that Jason's dad won't necessarily be observing Jason complete these chores. So how is Jason's dad, without observing the behavior, possibly going to know if the lawn's mowed, if the garden's weeded, and if the pool is cleaned? Well, there's one very specific type of measurement we use in this case when you might not necessarily be observing the behavior, but you can still measure the outcome. And what is that? A, event recording. Well, event recording is essentially recording every time something happens. It's more or less frequency recording during a functional behavior assessment. And in order to do event recording, Jason's dad needs to be present and taking some sort of count or frequency data. But Jason's dad is not there, so he can't take event recording. What about B, whole interval recording? Well, same thing. Even though whole interval is discontinuous, Jason's dad isn't going to be there to measure these outcomes. Either way, whole interval recording is not necessarily going to let Jason's dad know if these activities are done, right? Mowing the lawn, weeding the garden, and cleaning the pool, those are products, okay? He's not too worried about how Jason is going about doing it. He's worried about the product or the outcome. And so when we're worried about the product and the outcome and we're not observing behavior, well, permanent product is typically going to be our best bet. Jason's dad can come home and he can see is the lawn mowed, he can see is the garden weeded, he can see is the pool cleaned. Play check is just momentary time sampling for groups. It has all the same issues as whole interval recording. We're not worried so much about the actual behavior of cleaning and mowing and weeding. We're worried about the outcome or the product. So Jason's dad is likely to use permanent product to measure, did Jason complete his chores? When you want to change the frequency of future occurrences of behavior, what is the most important thing to focus on from the following answer choices? Easy question, just worded strange, which is why you always have to slow down and read every single word and understand the question first. When you want to change the frequency of future behavior. So we want to change future behavior. And what impacts future behavior? What affects future behavior? What changes future behavior? A, antecedents. Well, antecedents evoke behavior, right? Antecedents alter motivation, but they're not necessarily what we're most concerned with when we're talking about altering or changing future behavior. What about B, prompt? Well, prompt is just an antecedent. What we're worried about here is a consequence. A consequence changes future behavior. And be careful, because you also can choose D, reinforcement. And sure, reinforcement is a consequence. Reinforcement is going to increase behavior. What if we want to decrease behavior, though? We would use punishment. And so the best answer is consequence. Although reinforcement also changes future occurrences of behavior, we didn't specify what type of change. We just want to change it. If we want to decrease it, we would need punishment. So if we want to change frequency of future occurrences of behavior, just in general, we're most worried about C, our consequences. Which of the following procedures is most likely to underestimate how often behavior occurs? Now, this is one of those questions where you just kind of need to be familiar with it. So if they ask you what underestimates behavior or what overestimates behavior, start thinking interval recording. So if we're underestimating behavior, what are we doing? Well, our data is indicating that the behavior is happening less than it actually is. If we're overestimating behavior, data are indicating behavior is happening more than it actually is. So what procedure is likely to say behavior is happening less than it actually is? A, whole interval recording. Well, think about how whole interval recording works. If I have a 15-second interval, that behavior has to occur the entire 15 seconds to count as a response. And if it doesn't, it's a no response. So even if that behavior occurs 14 seconds out of 15, I'm still marking no response. So there's a good chance I'm not capturing fully how often that behavior is occurring. It's likely to underestimate. What about B, partial interval? Well, partial interval is the other side of the coin, right? Partial interval is typically going to overestimate, because if we have a 15-second interval, that behavior only needs to occur for a split second to count. So you can see why whole is going to make it look like the behavior is happening less, while partial is going to make it look like it's happening more. Momentary can be either, because it really just depends on, is the behavior happening in the moment, at the end of that interval. And then duration recording shouldn't do either, because duration recording is continuous. We should be capturing every instance of the behavior. So what is most likely to underestimate? Well, it's going to be A, whole interval recording. A race car driver wants to improve his ability to stay on the racing line when making a specific turn. During practice, he makes that specific turn and stays on the racing line 17 times. He attempted that turn 20 times. What is the percentage of occurrence? So we have a measurement of percentage of occurrence. And what is percentage of occurrence saying? It is asking us what percent did the response happen given the amount of opportunities. So percentage of opportunities, percentage of occurrence. So first you need to ask or find out how many opportunities were there? How many times could it have possibly occurred? Well, we know the attempts were 20. So this could have possibly occurred or happened 20 times. There are 20 attempts. So how many times did it actually occur? How many times did it actually happen? 17. So what is our percentage? Well, let's find our percentage by dividing 17 divided by 20. So 17, it happened 17 times out of a possible 20. Multiply by 100 and we get 85%. So our percentage of occurrence is going to be 85%. Once again, need to know averages, need to know percentages, need to know totals, need to know rates, and it's all very simple calculations. Percentages, you're just taking your smaller number, dividing it by your larger number, in most cases in ABA. With percentages of occurrence, you're taking how many times the behavior occurred, dividing it by how many times it could have possibly occurred. How many possible attempts were there? So 17 times out of 20, it occurred 85% of the time. Make sure you understand this question. Do it until you do understand this question, okay? It's a very easy question once you get the simple math down, and it's one on the exam that you should knock out the park. If you are fading reinforcement and going from teaching a behavior to maintaining a behavior, what order would be most appropriate starting with teaching a behavior? So let's think about this. We are fading reinforcement, and what does that mean? It means we are reducing the amount of reinforcement given or increasing the response requirement. And we are moving from teaching to maintaining. So we're starting by strengthening or teaching a new behavior, all the way to behavior is more or less learned, and now we want to maintain that behavior. So what order is going to be most appropriate? And we're beginning with teaching. So we're teaching a behavior. What is the best reinforcement schedule to use when teaching a brand new behavior? In most cases. Now, obviously, we're generalizing here, but in most cases, we're looking for a continuous reinforcement schedule to start. So we can eliminate A, we can eliminate D, because we're starting with teaching a behavior. So we're trying to begin with continuous. And now we have to fade it out. So if we're going to fade it, okay, in order, are we going to go fixed next or variable? Well, we're going to go fixed next because variable is going to be the strongest basic reinforcement schedule, right? Because it's unpredictable. And so if I'm teaching first, I want to go continuous. I'm going to fade to fixed as the behavior gets stronger. And then when I'm talking about maintenance, I want the strongest basic schedule, which is variable. So if I'm going from teaching to maintaining, we're going to go continuous, fixed, variable. Continuous is an FR1, so every single response is reinforced. Fixed means there's a consistent amount of responses required, right? It's never changing. And then variable is that slot machine effect, which is the strongest type of basic schedule. So teaching is continuous to fixed to maintaining, which is variable. Excellent. Thank you for watching. Make sure you check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack and practice exams. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. As always, work hard, study hard. We'll see you soon.